It was pouring. I carried the hard drive holding my sister's wedding film into the gilded hall, only for security to sneer, "You're not on the list." Minutes later, beneath violins and fireworks, the footage I'd bled for filled a giant screen while I stood outside like a ghost. Through the glass, I watched my mother beam as the jewelry brand logo sold with my labor blazed across the projection. In that heartbeat, love ignited into dynamite, and I vowed to blast every hidden truth online, shattering their polished glow. Think this is just another family tale? Think again! Smash! Subscribe now before the next film detonates. If you've ever thought betrayal only comes from strangers, then you need to hear this story. Sheets of mountain rain lash the glass walls of the Royal Summit Resort, turning the marble corridor into a slick river of reflections. Emma Tran sprints barefoot emerald gown hiked to her knees, camera case banging against her hip like a frantic metronome. Her lungs burn, her pulse drums louder than the storm, yet she presses on, driven by one impossible need: reach the ballroom before the vows lock her out forever. Crystal sconces blur past in skewed frames. The hallway feels endless, a tunnel of distorted chandeliers. Two security guards appear, black suits, earpieces, shoulders like levees. They plant themselves across the red carpet runner, an immovable dam. One raises a hand, polite final. "Ma'am, authorized personnel only," he intones. "I'm family," Emma gasps, hair dripping onto chilled skin. "I'm the bride's sister." The guard consults an iPad. Swipe, scroll, frown. Name's not on the list, sorry. Through the crack of a gilded door behind him spills golden light and champagne laughter, the tremor of a string quartet tuning for the processional. A universe already convinced she doesn't belong. Emma steps forward anyway. The second guard pivots a professional practiced block. Her shoulder meets iron muscle. Pain blooms. Anger ignites. "Call Margaret Tran," she insists. "Or Lily. They'll fix this." The guards exchange that weary glance used when decisions were made far above their pay grade. "Ma'am," the first repeats softer now, pitying, "You need to step back." The corridor tilts. Lightning detonates outside the windows, searing white across the glass, and with it flashes a memory as vicious as the strike itself. Morning after the funeral. Boston, 13 years earlier. A church basement thick with wilting lilies and burned coffee. 14-year-old Emma hovers beside a folding table, gripping her father's Hi8 camcorder in both trembling hands. The strap, still adjusted for his larger wrist, dangles like an oversized bracelet, heavy, yet warming the last part of him she can grasp. Across the room, Margaret stands poised in jet-black charmeuse veil netting, barely hiding eyes already dry. Lily, 17, crimson lipstick, leans in, and the two confer in a hush of perfume and polished smiles. They never look toward Emma. A family friend approaches. "Richard was so proud of you girls," he tells Margaret. She smooths a gloved hand over her grief-slim waist. "He adored Lily," she replies. "He always said she was destined for the spotlight." Emma hears every syllable. She raises the camcorder, framing mother and sister in the viewfinder's square, that chasm widening in monochrome green. She presses record and never presses stop. Thunder cracks, dragging Emma back to the corridor. "My mother is inside," she says, voice now calm as broken ice. "Please let me pass." Orders came directly from Mrs. Tran, the guard murmurs. "I'm sorry." Emma imagines Margaret, real estate titan, socialite, puppet master, offering crisp instructions, erasing her younger daughter with an executive shrug. She imagines Lily, luminous, in couture silk, air-kissing dignitaries, confident the understudy remains backstage. Invisible, obedient. The words scald. She backs away a single step, pivots, and marches down the corridor, each heel strike a war drum. The guards exhale relief, unaware they've lit a fuse. Voiceover bleeds in low and intimate, threaded with the storm. People think stories start with dreams. Mine starts with doors. Emma, at 13, 15, 17, appears in jump cuts hallway of their cramped Boston apartment, each version clutching a different camera, plastic, Fisher-Price battered, Nikon sleek, mirrorless, always chasing the silhouette of her mother, guiding Lily toward some off-screen brilliance. Cut to a Formica kitchen 5 years ago. Unpaid bills addressed to Margaret Tran, checks signed E. Tran. Margaret breezes in compliments. Lily's new segment on local TV calls Emma our rock. Cut to a studio lobby 2 years back, posters for Lily Tran live beam from every wall. Margaret fusses with Lily's diamond pendant while Emma stands off-frame holding a reflector. A producer asks, "Who's the grip?" And Lily answers, "My sister," like describing a borrowed light stand. Back to the present. Emma kicks open a service stairwell door, plunges into metallic gloom, slams it shut, the echo a private thunderclap. She braces against the wall, tears streaking mascara down rain-slick cheeks. Shame threatens to swallow her, but rage steadies her breath. Ceremony begins in 5 minutes. She opens her camera case. Inside rests her custom red Komodo sensor still warm from yesterday's mountaintop shoot footage Lily intends to monetize without credit. Emma traces the cold metal housing. This camera never lies, never edits her out. She tastes salt and copper, remembering another afternoon 2 summers before the heart attack took her father. Back porch cicadas, droning sunlight javelining through maple leaves. Richard Tran, still in work shirt and loosened tie, knelt beside a 12-year-old Emma, guiding her fingers over the high-8's focus ring. "Frame what matters," he told her, tapping the viewfinder with a calloused knuckle, "but never forget to step into the picture yourself. If you stay behind the lens too long, people will write you out." He laughed easy and certain, as though love were gravity, and gravity never failed. That memory sweeps over her electric step into the frame. She has spent years chronicling someone else's brilliance, believing proximity equaled belonging. Tonight she understands the wedding isn't her exclusion, it's her entrance. The true documentary isn't proof of worth. It's exposure of power, and the quiet sibling who refuses cropping. Resolve settles heavier than a Steadicam. She no longer trembles. Somewhere below, Lily is about to pledge forever to a man Emma barely knows while flashbulbs bloom like staged detonations. Emma presses her forehead to concrete and whispers, "Roll camera." Another flash of memory 2 months earlier, the day Lily announced the engagement. Downtown bistro brass fixtures gleaming. Lily clinks a champagne flute, slides a gold-foiled card across the table. The photo drone shot of Lily and fiancé Mason in a white convertible credits invisible though Emma flew the drone. "The venue is insane," Lily gushes. Mom closed the entire skydeck. Margaret's eyes glitter. "Only the best for my star." Emma smiles politely, noting her expired parking meter. "I'll handle the trailer," she offers, voice steady like volunteer blood. "And you're a bridesmaid," Lily chirps. "Emerald looks amazing on you." Silence calculates how many freelance gigs will cover that dress. Margaret intervenes, tone honey sweet. "Think of it as your gift, sweetheart. You're so resourceful. Resourceful. Independent. Synonyms for unpaid. Synonyms." Emma chews the inside of her cheek until she tastes iron. "Anything for family," she says, and Lily toasts to sisterhood. Back in the stairwell, Emma fishes out the laminated vendor badge mailed just in case. She tears it down, the perforation halves fluttering like dead moths. Above, a door squeaks. Vanessa the planner descends, clutching her clipboard. She startles at the sight of Emma. "They said you'd left. I tried." Emma answers, voice flat. "Can you get me in Vanessa's eyes, Dart?" Mrs. Tran was explicit. "If I disobey, it's okay," Emma interrupts, gentler. "Not your fight." She slips past, climbs to a maintenance hatch, emerges on a narrow balcony overlooking the reception hall. Below, 200 guests shimmer in tuxedos and sequins. Lily appears atop the grand staircase, gown pooled like starlight at her feet. Violins launch into Pachelbel. Margaret waits at the bottom, arms open, tears diamonding her lashes. Emma does not film. Instead, she turns the lens inward. Raindrops bead in her hair, mascara streaks like survival paint. She presses record. "My name is Emma Tran," she whispers, steady as any anchor. "If you're watching, it means I wasn't welcome at my own sister's wedding. Someone decided truth is dangerous. Decide for yourself. Click save. Breath release." In the ballroom, ushers swing the doors shut. Latches click, applause swells, a literal door sealing the pretense. Emma, unseen on high, hugs the camera, the way a 14-year-old once hugged her father's camcorder. For the first time tonight, she smiles fierce and clear. The story has discovered its real opening shot, and Lily will never be able to crop her out again. She pockets the memory card, wipes her face, and vanishes into a maze of service corridors, footsteps fading behind the promise her father taught her: frame what matters, and this time, step inside. Emma's apartment 2 months before the wedding looked less like a home and more like a war room. Storyboards blanketed the walls, sketched frames of sweeping drone shots, intimate slow pans and color temperature notations scribbled in Sharpie. At the center, taped above the desk lamp, was a single post-it that read, "Frame what matters." It wasn't motivational fluff, it was triage. She had 61 days, 3 credit cards near max, and a sister who treated her like an invisible tripod. So this note in her father's looping hand was the only thing anchoring her to sanity. The first production meeting started at 7:02 p.m. and detonated every budget line she'd mapped in Excel the night before. Sophia, her gaffer, wanted a second sky panel for Mountain Dawn color. Ray the drone pilot insisted on an Inspire 2 with dual operator control or nothing. Emma leaned over the folding table, fingers templed, wondering how many freelance edits she could cram between now and shoot week without falling asleep at the wheel. When the pizza arrived, she paid in cash, tips included with money she had earmarked for rent. Nobody noticed her swallow as she handed over the bills. Later alone, she opened her banking app. 2 cards flashing red, 1 blinking amber. She inhaled, clicked increase limit, and felt the credit company's algorithm weigh her life against interest rates. Approved. 30 seconds later, she closed the laptop and reopened Premiere. Sacrifice logged, focus regained. A dawn flight to Noi Bai, a hop to Lao Cai, then a spine-shaking van ride that switchbacked through mist so thick the headlamps looked like drowning stars. By the time the crew reached Sapa, the clouds had peeled back to reveal fans of golden light knifing through rice terrace valleys. Sophia clapped like a kid on Christmas. Ray swore he could taste the footage. Emma simply set her bags down, inhaled the petrichor, and reminded herself this was what debt smelled like before it turned to art. Lily breezed into the mountainside lodge an hour later, rolling a monogrammed trunk that probably cost more than the entire lighting package. She wore a puffer jacket but left it unzipped so the custom silk lace bodice of her rehearsal gown could peek through camera-ready, even in jet lag. Margaret trailed half a step behind phone, glued to her ear, issuing instructions about floral imports and seating charts, never once glancing at her younger daughter. When Lily spotted the storyboard wall Emma had taped to a bamboo screen, she offered a perfunctory smile. "Love the vibe, Em. Very cinematic. Just remember I need to look like the moment." Emma nodded, teeth tight. She pointed to the call sheet golden hour on the cloud bridge at 5:12 a.m. and gently suggested Lily sleep. Lily laughed, said filters could erase dark circles, and disappeared to her suite. Margaret stayed long enough to pluck one frame off the wall, a sketch of Lily silhouetted against a horizon of tiered emerald and murmur, try to tilt the light toward her left side, softer on the jawline. Then she too vanished. At 4:30 a.m., Emma's phone alarm shattered the stillness. She slipped from bed, tugged on thermal layers, and padded down the hallway where Ray was already sipping bitter instant coffee from a tin mug. Outside, the world was inked indigo, the air wet enough to drink. Crew members assembled in quiet choreography, matte black pelican cases, stacked soft boxes, unfurled like origami lanterns. The only missing piece was the bride. She arrived 10 minutes late barefoot, laughing into her phone. The dress custom Ely Saab, a constellation of hand-beaded pearls, fluttered around her calves. She apologized to no one, posed directly beneath the crane arm, and waited for validation. Emma called action. Ray's Inspire lifted into the pre-sun haze, propellers buzzing like mechanical bees. Lily stood at the bridge's apex fabric, rippling in updraft, every motion practiced as if the mountains were just another sound stage. Sophia lit a bounce to kiss her cheekbones. The light wrapped flawlessly, almost obscene in its perfection. And yet Emma behind her monitor saw only stagecraft beauty polished until nothing human remained. At 6:40 a.m., they broke for wardrobe adjustments. The crew dispersed toward a makeshift base camp, but Lily veered off following the ridgeline trail. Emma, clipping her monitor to a harness, tracked her through the camera's telephoto. The dress's train snagged in shrubs. Lily cursed and yanked it free, emerging onto a platform where a man in a crisp navy trench waited. He wasn't part of production. Emma hit record. The stranger later, she'd confirm his name, was Cedric Lang, Senior Brand Partnerships for Paragon Luxe, handed Lily a leather folio. She signed with the flourish of someone accustomed to autographs, then produced a flash drive from her clutch. Cedric slipped it into his coat pocket, shook her hand, and disappeared down the slope. Total time, 47 seconds, enough to rewrite everything. When Lily returned, she complimented the clouds and asked if her highlighter needed a touch-up. Emma played it neutral, though, adrenaline hammered so loud she barely registered Sophia's question about exposure values. She tucked the camera card into a zip pocket sewn into her thermal leggings, the one place Margaret had never bothered to look. Night fell like inkwash. The shoot wrapped with a campfire scene, Lily in chunky knit and beanie roasting marshmallows, pretending rustic charm. Margaret arrived just before Golden Take 3, chauffeured by lodge staff, carrying a hamper of champagne and macarons. The shot completed, Lily vanished again, this time to Instagram the sugar on her sweater. Margaret approached Emma, frictionless smile in place. "You're capturing her glow, darling. Keep the grating warm. The network likes warmth." Emma's mouth shaped thanks, throat too dry for consonants. Later, when the crew dozed in shared bunks, Emma crouched by the router rack, Ethernet cable jacked into her laptop. Hui had taught her well-spoof a MAC address, scrape the lodge's weak firewall, and slip downstream into any unencrypted traffic. Margaret's account was a fortress, but Lily's, she reused passphrases like song lyrics. 10 minutes of dictionary attacks, and Emma landed inside her sister's Gmail. The first unread email sat like a detonator subject final contract, Paragon Lux X Lily Tran. She opened the PDF, skimming past the legalese, until the numbers roared off the page mid-six-figure licensing fee for exclusive rights to all behind-the-scenes footage from the Cloud Bride shoot. Emma's footage. Clause 7.2 promotional materials may be used to launch Lily Tran Beyond Borders, a travel lifestyle pilot. Clause 8 delivery via attached drive before press embargo lifts. In the thread below, a time-stamped message from Lily. Can't wait for the Paris premiere. Mom already moving chess pieces. Love her. Emma's world pinwheeled. Years of silent compromise, of burying hurt under professionalism, suddenly calcified into something sharp enough to cut loose. She downloaded every attachment, forwarded them to an encrypted vault Hoy had set up just in case, and wiped local traces. Then she scrolled further. An older chain revealed Margaret pitching the footage to network executives weeks before Emma even drafted the call sheet. She used Emma's deck watermark removed. A note from Margaret's personal Gmail read, "If Emma inquires, remind her this is ultimately Lily's likeness. She'll comply once she understands exposure benefits the family brand." Exposure. That word again offered like a medal while they mined her labor for gold. Outside, the campfire embers hissed in drizzle. Emma closed the laptop. She should sleep, but instead she slipped on a rain shell and stepped into the night. The mountain air smelled of cedar smoke and betrayal. Lily's laughter carried from a private veranda, mixing with the ping of champagne flutes and the shutter clicks of a photographer she hadn't hired. Emma watched from the tree-lined documentarian turned voyeur of her own unraveling. A foxfire glow rimmed the horizon at 500 a.m., when Ray's alarm summoned the crew for another sunrise. Emma lay awake counting heartbeats. With each pulse she rehearsed confrontation, Lily's widened eyes, Margaret's condescension, perhaps even tears, though not from guilt, only inconvenience. She imagined speaking her father's words step into the picture, but every scenario ended with the doors in Boston slamming shut even harder. Instead, she chose silence and strategy. She'd film the remaining setups. She'd craft the official trailer. Margaret wanted opal light, airy strings, a voiceover about eternal love. But parallel to it, she'd craft something else, a reel of unguarded faces and clandestine deals of what beauty costs when truth is collateral. By mid-afternoon, the lodge lobby had turned into triage once more. Garment bags shed sequins on sofa arms. Batteries charged like miniature cities. Margaret intercepted Emma between camera moves, phone pressed to her ear. "Darling, quick note, the network adores the high-altitude concept. They'll need all raw footage by next Thursday. Just send them directly. Lily's already briefed legal." A vein near Emma's temple flexed. "I'm still culling selects, and the copyright is mine until we sign a separate release." Margaret's smile went brittle. "Everything we do is for Lily's platform, sweetheart. We're a family ecosystem. You benefit when she rises." Emma almost laughed. She almost screamed. Instead, she pivoted to Sophia, to Ray, to the call of last light, and captured Lily spinning on a ridge, rimmed in backlit mist, the dress beating like a fractured halo. While they packed at day's end, Cedric reappeared. He nodded at Emma as though she were part of the scenery. Lily handed him a fresh SSD labeled B-roll, Tran wedding. Emma watched from 10 feet away, lens cap still off, red tally light, accidentally blinking. Cedric's handshake sealed an exchange worth more than Emma's annual freelance total. Nobody spoke to her. That night, she lay under thin down in a bunk above stacked pelican cases, screen glow painting her face as she opened Premiere and dragged timeline markers into place, keepers and liars, in 2 color-coded rows. She cut Lily's pirouettes to a metronomic heartbeat, overlaying raw audio of Cedric saying, "We'll position you as the face of luxury." It synced with Lily's smile, too perfectly heartbeat turning into applause, warping into static, music of deceit. At 2:11 a.m., Sophia stirred, asked if Emma was okay. Emma said yes, saved the project as Family Façade V1, and closed her laptop. She felt oddly serene, like standing in the eye of a hurricane where the wind is quiet, but the sky reminds you chaos still circles. Tomorrow they'd travel back to Hanoi, then Boston. The footage would need redundancies, hidden drives, contingencies. She'd schedule a meeting with Hui to encrypt backups. She'd draft an invoice with a dollar amount Margaret would never pay, but might one day be admissible in court. She fell asleep rehearsing a line she hadn't spoken yet. "You monetized my love. I'm repossessing the footage. The return trek blurred winding descent, bullet train hum airport lounges, smelling of duty-free jasmine. Lily Instagrammed every waypoint, hashtag cloudbride trending under filtered skylines. Margaret Skyped with a Los Angeles talent agent about a fall pilot. Emma typed notes, color-coded evidence, scarfed stale croissants, and filmed when she could a tilted lens through TSA chaos, capturing Lily laughing, Cedric texting Margaret, counting blessings and frequent flyer miles. Touchdown Boston, 3 a.m. local. The air hung thick and urban, far from mountain clarity. In baggage claim, Lily hugged Emma, fragrant with sleep mask serum. "You saved me again," she murmured. Emma hugged back, feeling for the first time nothing. She retrieved her cases, hailed a rideshare, and watched the city glide by empty streets, sodium lights, ghosts of decisions approaching. As the car crested Longfellow Bridge, reflecting crimson taillights across the Charles, Emma opened her email drafts. Subject line, licensing breach, invoice. She typed 3 sentences, concise and lethal, then saved without sending. Timing mattered, narrative mattered, and she at last controlled both. Up ahead, the skyline flickered. Somewhere beyond those towers lay a wedding Margaret deemed more valuable than her second-born. Emma exhaled a slow breath, tasting mountain cold beneath urban smog. 61 days to cut a trailer, but only 59 until vows. Enough time to braid truth beneath chiffon. She thumbed a voice memo, day 1 double exposure project, and hit record. In the nearly silent car, her father's camcorder warning beep, an old memory seemed to echo from nowhere. Battery low, tape running out. Emma smiled into the darkness. That she thought is exactly how they will feel when the credits roll. Emma found Lily at the edge of the ridge just after first light, where the granite spine plunged into a valley of silver cloud. The drone crew was still packing gear, but the mountain had already emptied of tourists, leaving a hush so clean Emma could hear her own breath. Lily leaned on the weather-cracked guardrail, the skirt of her rehearsal gown fanning in the wind like a broken sail. In her hand glinted Cedric's silver pen, a keepsake from the clandestine signature Emma had captured the day before. Emma approached with the steadiness of a tightrope walker. Her boots crunched mica in the rock, and that soft noise made Lily turn startled, clutching the pen to her chest. The early sun lit them in chiaroscuro, Emma in shadow, Lily radiant and backlit as if nature itself was picking sides. "How much, Lily?" Emma asked, voice low but slicing. "How much did Paragon Lux pay for my footage?" A gust carried the words straight over the precipice as though the mountain wanted no part of them. Lily blinked, then pressed 2 fingers to her temple in annoyance, like someone fending off a mosquito. "Can we not do this right now? I have another fitting in 20 minutes. Emma stepped closer. "You sold the rights, all of it, without telling me." "It's called seizing opportunity," Lily said, shrugging. "You'll still get credit in the end, Slate. That's exposure no amount of money can buy." "It was never about credit." Emma hissed, her throat tight. "It was about respect." The pen in Lily's hand twirled, catching sunlight like a knife. "Look," she sighed, as though pacifying a hysterical child. "Paragon's launching a global campaign. This is huge for both of us." "No," Emma cut in. "It's huge for you. They don't even know I exist." "Because you keep yourself behind the camera," Lily countered, raising her eyebrows with faux empathy. "You can't blame people for forgetting the girl who won't step into the spotlight." Emma swallowed the retort that burned on her tongue. She imagined her father's voice steady, encouraging, but it was drowned out by the derisive echo of Lily's words. She unclipped the CF card from the pocket of her windbreaker and held it up between 2 fingers. "This is the only master," she lied. "No card, no campaign." For half a second, Lily's mask slipped, revealing raw panic. Then she recovered, chin tilting higher. "You wouldn't sabotage the wedding," she said, as if reciting a universal law. "Mom would never forgive you. Neither would the press. Imagine the narrative bitter little sister ruins her famous sibling's day out of jealousy." Emma felt her pulse in her ears. "Imagine the narrative she shot back when they discover you cashed in on footage you never owned." She tucked the card away, the gesture final, then turned to leave before the tremor in her hands betrayed her. Emma Lily's voice cracked like a whip. Emma paused but didn't turn. "This is a chance for the whole family to rise. You should be happy for me." Emma looked over her shoulder. "You're right," she said, voice steadying. "I should be. I wish I were." The lodge hallway smelled of damp cedar and espresso grounds. Emma's room was a monk's cell, simple bed, plywood desk, view of ragged clouds. She shut the door, sagged against it, then yanked her travel tripod from the corner. She mounted her pocket blackmagic camera and angled it toward the desk chair, a single shaft of light pooling across the seat like an interrogation lamp. She pressed record, exhaled, and let the lens see her raw, rain-slick bangs plastered to her forehead, eyes still glassy from adrenaline. File note, she began. Voice a rasp. Project codename Truth Cut Day 0. She introduced time, GPS coordinates, temperature, treating the confession like field research. Subject, Lily Tran, on-camera talent, has entered a licensing agreement with Paragon Lux without my knowledge or consent. Copy of contract acquired. She held up her phone, snapping a still frame of the PDF evidence secured in encrypted vault. Her throat tightened, but she kept going, cataloging every detail. Cedric's appearance, Margaret's prior pitches, payout clauses, the moral debt that could never be repaid. When she finished, she reached forward and stopped the recording. The camera's fan whirred down to silence. She ejected the card, tucked it into a diaper of gaffer tape, and stuck the bundle behind the room's smoke detector, her makeshift dead drop. Then she opened her laptop. A message sat unread from Hui, subject line safebox ready. She keyed an encrypted call. His voice answered through tinny laptop speakers. I saw your ping. You okay? Define okay. Emma kept her tone wry, but her hand shook on the trackpad. You sound like a hard drive at 70 degrees a minute from failing, Hui said. Talk to me. She laid out the timeline. Lily Cedric, the pen. The hidden flash drives, the sky-high license fee. Hui whistled long and low. Family discount, huh, he said. Damn. I need to trace the money, Emma said. Follow the contracts, show how Mom's been funneling my footage to leverage Lily's brand. Hui's keyboard clacked. Send me whatever docs you have. We'll run them through ChainSight, track the payments from Paragon's escrow. If they've paid already, the routing will leave a trail. Emma forwarded the PDFs and nodded to herself as though committing to a treaty. And Hui, I'm cutting 2 versions of the trailer, the one Margaret expects and one that shows people who Lily really is. Silence, then a chuckle. Truth cut. Bold. Necessary, Emma corrected. Every martyr said that before they lit the match. Hui warned gently. But Emma heard the pride beneath the caution. The call ended. The room returned to quiet, but her head filled with white noise, fear, fury, resolve braiding into something unstoppable. She opened Premiere. 2 timelines. Empty slates. She labeled one Client Master, the other Truth Cut. Then she dragged Lily's mountain footage to both, listening to the SSD hum like a restless heart. A knock shattered her focus. She startled, slapped the laptop closed, and crossed to the door. Margaret's voice filtered in, sweet but firm. Emma, dear, may I? She cracked the door an inch. Margaret's face appeared perfectly made up despite the altitude pearl earrings catching hallway lamplight. Lily seems upset, she chirped. Says you're giving her attitude about a brand partnership. Emma gripped the edge of the door. She's monetizing the footage, without my consent. Margaret's smile held, but her eyes cooled. Darling, she cooed, exposure for one of us is exposure for all of us. Lily's success reflects on you. No, Mom, it erases me. Emma bit off the words. That footage is mine, my lens, my team, my liability. I maxed 3 credit cards to shoot it. Margaret's phone chimed. She didn't glance away. When Lily's show gets picked up, you can negotiate a bigger role. Think long game, sweetie. A brush of static in Emma's head became a roar. She remembered the way her mother had once applauded Lily's first on-air segment while asking Emma to please keep her voice down because the producer was on speaker. She inhaled through her nose. The long game involves not being robbed in the opening move. Margaret's smile faded. She raised the phone, tapping the screen until Lily's face filled it. Cheeks, rouged, lips pressed. Talk some sense into your sister, Margaret said. Lily's voice crackled through the tinny speaker. Em, come on, this is business. You filmed me so you could have a reel. Now you'll have one scene in Paris. Why are you being so provincial? Emma felt a click deep and seismic like tectonic plates shifting. She leaned in, letting the phone's camera capture her storm-gray eyes. Provincial, she repeated softly, as if savoring poison. Remember that word when you need someone to grade your footage for free? Lily scoffed. Don't be dramatic. Margaret inserted herself, voice syrupy but sharp at the edges. Emma, don't be selfish. Family is a stage, not a diary. The audience sees unity or it sees nothing at all. Emma smiled then, an expression empty of warmth. Maybe it's time the audience sees the rehearsal footage. She closed the door without another word. Margaret's muffled protests followed her like dying echoes. She leaned her forehead against the wood heart pounding. Stage versus diary. Margaret had always reduced life to pageantry, every vulnerable moment repackaged as content to elevate Lily. Maybe Emma had participated out of loyalty or guilt, or the desperation of a second child proving she deserved to share oxygen. But today, the stage lights had scorched away her last illusion. She would keep the diary in frame in 4K with perfect audio, and she would let the world read it. Hui's return email arrived with an attached flowchart of bank routing paths color-coded like a murder board. Paragon's escrow wired funds to a Delaware LLC which shot the money to a Singapore shell, which transferred a slightly reduced sum to Starlight Media Holdings' Margaret's vehicle for family brand development. The path then forked. A third went to Lily's new publicist, a third to Margaret's Manhattan pied-à-terre renovation, and a third sat in cryptocurrency stablecoins waiting. Emma stared until numbers blurred. It was precise, methodical, premeditated. She printed the chart to PDF, saved it to the vault, then took a screenshot for her phone ammunition for when people asked why she torched her family's reputation. She called Hui. "This is bigger than I thought." "We can dig deeper," he offered. "Show how she deferred tax. People care about financial malfeasance." Emma shook her head, even though he couldn't see. "What people care about," she said slowly, "is betrayal dressed in couture. I'll show them both." She opened Premiere again. On the client master timeline, she built a dreamy overture Lily in slow-motion veil tumbling across the frame piano, arpeggios swelling like first love. On the truth cut timeline, she placed the same shot side by side with Cedric sliding the flash drive into his coat pocket. She cross-cut them to the beat of a ticking clock, lowering saturation hiking mids to show the artificial light. She worked until hunger cramped her stomach, then ordered instant noodles from room service. While the kettle boiled, she set her phone to record a voice memo. D2, Lily denies wrongdoing, she narrated. Margaret frames dissent as selfishness. Banking trail verified. Next step, unmask. Outside, a storm gathered over the mountains. Thunder rolled like distant artillery. Emma watched lightning spider the sky and thought of her father describing weather fronts while driving her to grade school art camp. Storm's just two pressures fighting for the same space, he'd said, serene. Eventually, one wins, or they learn to swirl together. The memory hit her like a chord resolving. She wondered which outcome lay ahead. She slurped noodles, half listening to rain, until an idea struck so sudden she nearly knocked over the kettle. She opened a new After Effects project and designed a title sequence for the truth-cut white serif text, dissolving into smoke, revealing the phrase family or façade against black. Underneath a time code ticking in red symbolizing evidence captured in real time. She exported a low-res proxy and watched it loop. It felt like a pulse. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Lily. "We need to talk. Privately." Beneath it, a smiling selfie with Margaret and Mason in some spa gazebo. Even the attempt at conciliation came packaged in pre-approved aesthetics. Emma didn't reply. Instead, she forwarded Hui the text. "Add to dossier." Near midnight, exhaustion hammered her eyelids, but she forced herself to back up everything raw footage to 2 encrypted drives, one labeled Kintsugi, the Japanese art of mending broken pottery with gold, because she intended to repair the story, but the cracks would remain visible. She sealed the drives in anti-static bags, taped one under the desk, stashed the other behind a loose floorboard. She took photos of each hiding spot, saved them to the vault, then disabled geotags. Margaret would search rooms if she sensed rebellion. Emma counted on it. Yet even Margaret couldn't tear up floorboards in a boutique eco-lodge without alerting staff. At 1:27 a.m., she collapsed onto the bed fully clothed. Adrenaline still fired along her nerves. She grabbed her father's old camcorder from the nightstand, a ritual talisman, and held it against her chest. The case smelled faintly of engine oil and cedar from his garage workshop. She pressed her thumb over the cracked record button and whispered, "I'm stepping into the picture now, Dad. Hope the focus is sharp." Sleep took her in fragments. Dreams of red carpets that turned to quicksand, of Margaret's voice, echoing through infinite hallways of Lily, waving from a yacht shaped like a wedding ring. She woke twice heart-racing, checked that the drives were still hidden, then fell back into uneasy rest. Dawn seeped in at 5 pink and fragile. Emma rose, dizzy, brewed instant coffee and reviewed the schedules. They were due to leave Sapa by noon truck to Laokai, train to Hanoi, flight to Boston. Plenty of transit pockets for Lily and Margaret to notice Emma's distance, ask questions, probe loyalties. She made a mental note to keep the client master edits on a separate SSD easily accessible bait to lull suspicion. The truth cut files would remain offline until the moment she chose to strike. Margaret knocked at 5:45, announcing a breakfast briefing in the lodge dining room. Emma, dressed in black jeans and a denim overshirt camera slung cross-body like armor, then joined the others. The table overflowed with dragon fruit platters and French press coffee. Lily greeted her with an exaggerated yawn and a shimmering smile. "Morning, sis," she said brightly as though yesterday's confrontation never happened. Margaret handed Emma a lace-edged envelope. Inside, embossed in rose gold, was an invitation to Lily's bridal luncheon and Boston vendors welcome but barred from the head table. Emma thumbed the card, feeling its weight, the indulgent cotton stock, and imagined how expensive the exclusion must have been. Margaret's phone rang, unknown international number. She excused herself, heels clicking toward the lobby. Emma sipped coffee, watching Lily scroll through notifications. She could taste the momentary hush, a thin film of civility draped over churning motives. About yesterday, Lily began not meeting her eyes. "I might have oversimplified things. The brand deal is complicated, but it's still good for you." Emma set her cup down with a controlled clink. "Define good." "Exposure," Lily said again, as though the word were holy scripture. "And we could leverage this into future gigs. Think documentaries for my show. You could direct." Emma folded the invitation, slid it back into the envelope. "I'm already directing," she said. "Just not the genre you think." Lily's forehead creased, uncertain whether to feel threatened. "What does that mean?" "You'll see the rough cut," Emma replied. "Everyone will." Margaret's voice floated in from the lobby, crisp with manufactured warmth. "Absolutely, we can finalize licensing once my younger daughter delivers the assets." Emma's stomach lurched, fury thrumming. Family as currency, her labor a chit traded for Lily's empire. She rose, chair skidding. "I need fresh air," she muttered and exited to the veranda. Mist drifted upward, cool on her cheeks. Below, clouds rolled like restless oceans. Emma closed her eyes, inhaled mountain cold, and let resolve crystallize sharper than frost. When she turned back inside, Lily was laughing at something on her phone. Margaret had rejoined, triumphant glow on her face. Emma observed them, the chosen and the chooser, perfectly content in their shared illusion, and felt for the first time older than both. She stepped past without a word, heading for her room to pack the final drives. Outside, thunder murmured again, distant yet definite, a reminder that pressure systems always clash before the air can clear. In her room, she zipped the truth-cut SSD into her camera bag's hidden cavity and sealed the zip with a dab of industrial glue. Not unbreakable, but tamper-evident. She watched the glue dry like setting resin, then stood back and exhaled. 7 days until the Boston preview screening. 7 days until Margaret expected to unveil a fairy tale trailer glowing with sisterly devotion. 7 days until Emma screened the alternate cut to a planet that fed on scandal dressed as authenticity. She powered up her laptop one last time. The flowchart Hui made hovered on screen, lit by dawn. Emma traced the arrows with her cursor and wondered if when the smoke cleared there'd be anything left of a family to repair. She thought of her father again, the way he'd once told her truth was like film grain imperfections that gave an image soul. She clicked save, closed the lid, and whispered, "Let's give them grain." Then she shouldered her bag, squared her spine, and headed downstairs, ready to follow the convoy back to civilization, armed with a story that would burn through the pristine veneer her mother and sister had polished for years. All she had to do was hold the camera steady and keep the focus sharp. The mountain would do the rest. Boston shimmered in its usual autumn pretense, gold-tipped trees lining Commonwealth Avenue brownstones, exhaling wood smoke and wealth. But inside Emma's apartment, the air felt tighter, electric, with unsaid truths. The mountain quiet of Sapa was gone. Now it was sirens outside her window, low-flying trains rumbling under her floor, and the harsh hum of fluorescent lights that didn't blink until she told them to. She sat at her desk, caffeine pooling in her stomach like gasoline Hui's voice static in one earbud, as he walked her through what he'd found. "So this thing your mom's Light Bloom Fund?" he said, tapping his keyboard. She registered it 5 years ago as a content incubator, except it's barely hosted any public events. No press, no legit output. Emma exhaled through her nose. She's been collecting grants to arts, culture, minority-owned initiative money. I found application PDFs on her old laptop, the ones she left at my place back in 22. Jesus, Hui muttered. Okay, but here's the kicker. The Quyen Den, she renamed it from Light Bloom, in Vietnamese, received a wire transfer last quarter from Paragon Lux via a Singapore shell company. It's the same shell that received the footage payment for the Sapa shoot. Traced it back through a daisy chain of 6 dummy LLCs. Amount, Emma asked. 250 grand, split 3 ways. His voice grew colder. 80 to Lily's publicist, 75 to your mom's production office. The rest's parked in crypto wallets under an alias Thui M88. Emma sat back in her chair. Her ribcage felt hollow, not broken, not crushed, just evacuated. They funneled my work, she said aloud. My effort, my vision. They put it through a money wash and turned it into a TV pitch deck. Not just a pitch, Hai said. It's active. There's a deck going around Hollywood. One of my friends in LA sent me a screenshot. It's called Daughters of the Wind. Tagline, the modern Asian family reimagined for the screen. Emma laughed, then, sharp and dry, no joy in it. Reimagined. Because the real version isn't convenient enough. You okay? I asked. Emma didn't answer. Her hand found the mouse. She clicked open her truth-cut timeline. Every frame felt different now. Heavier. Like each pixel carried proof of betrayal coded into its metadata. And yet this was her advantage. They wanted to wash her out of the story. She still had the lens. Keep following the money, she said. I need to finish this cut. Yeah, Hui's tone softened. You ready for what comes after? Emma's lips twitched. No, but I am ready to not feel like a prop in my own life. She worked through the night. Her apartment became a control bunker. Candles melted to wax puddles on every surface. Half-eaten takeout containers loitered on her windowsill. Post-its spread across the wall like a conspiracy theorist's fever dream time stamps emotional beats, whispers of scenes she couldn't forget even if she wanted to. The truth cut wasn't a trailer anymore. It had morphed into something else, part essay film, part documentary exorcism. Not clean, not elegant, but honest. In one section, she cut Lily's gleaming saw-paw footage to the sound of Margaret on speakerphone saying, "Family is a stage, not a diary." The music was silence. The only score was breath. Emma's caught breath behind the camera, raw and uneven. She juxtaposed that with a handheld shot she'd captured years ago at Lily's college graduation. Margaret clapping thunderously, while Emma sat 2 rows behind holding both diplomas because her mother hadn't stayed for Emma's ceremony the week before. She color-corrected the graduation footage, but only slightly leaving the shadows murky, the joy diluted. Truth lived in shadows. Then came the centerpiece, the long take of Lily signing the contract with Cedric on the mountain ridge. No narration, no dramatic score, just wind and the slow squeak of a pen across paper. Emma overlaid the exact same shot from a second angle, her reflection blurred in Cedric's sunglasses. A ghost watching her own story be sold. The dual layer hummed on screen. Emma watched it again and again, her breath catching each time. And yet it wasn't until she hit render on that scene that the real collapse began. She opened an old drive, one she hadn't touched in years, named Family. Archive. A digital attic. Forgotten folders, misnamed sequences. It was in a subfolder titled Misky Footage, raw that she found what would become the film's pulse. A kitchen in Dorchester. Emma, at 9, filming her parents while they danced to some vinyl jazz record. Her father's tie undone. Margaret barefoot, but still elegant, laughing in a way Emma had never seen again. Emma's childish voice from behind the camera. Mom, look here. Margaret doesn't look. She just says, Hold it steady, sweetie. The tape cut to another day, Emma's 12th birthday. A cake. 1 candle. Margaret is on the phone. Lily isn't home. Emma is filming herself in the mirror, holding the camcorder like a teddy bear. She mouths happy birthday to no one. Then high school. Emma filming Lily at her prom send-off, Margaret beaming in the background. Emma's name isn't spoken. The camera tilts. Frame loses focus. Then silence. Emma stared at the screen. Her throat burned. She dragged these moments into the timeline, ungraded, shaky, warped. She didn't trim them, she didn't stabilize, she let them exist as they were imperfect, fragile, truthful. The truth cut's emotional rhythm changed in that moment. It stopped being about proving Lily's exploitation and started becoming a documentary of what it felt like to be erased slowly, politely, year after year. Her father once told her film was about memory, not just image. She finally understood what he meant. At dawn, she brewed tea she wouldn't drink and wrote a voiceover script. Not narration, Emma hated narration, but texture. A spine for the viewer to grab when the footage shook too hard. Some families call you difficult when you stop giving without question. Others call you selfish when you ask for credit. Mine called me independent, a way of saying you're on your own. There are things more violent than screaming. One is silence, the other is pretending you were never there. You can only watch people profit off your love for so long before you decide to invoice the truth. She recorded the voiceover in 1 take. No pop filter, no studio mic, just her phone, her cracked voice, her breath in the stillness. The waveform trembled, but the words held. Mid-morning, she laid it on the floor beneath her desk. Her phone buzzed with messages, Lily checking on final trailer updates, Margaret forwarding invitations to a special donors preview screening, some network exec asking if they could post the first trailer to Instagram. She ignored them all. Instead, she opened the truth cut again and placed the final sequence, a slow-motion shot of Lily twirling in the Sapa mist. A hard cut to the banking flowchart. Margaret's voice. When Lily rises, we all rise. Emma's own whisper layered atop. Not if you bury me on the way up. Then black screen, white serif font, family, or façade. By the time she exported the final render, she hadn't slept in 30 hours. Her spine ached, her fingers trembled, but when she hit play and watched the cut in full for the first time, she cried not in rage, not in triumph. It was grief, clean and old and finally seen. She had made something that could never be unwatched. The file name read, Truth Cut VF BAS Suo 25 Final. She encrypted it, uploaded it to a private link with a failsafe timer. One click, and it would publish to every major platform, Vimeo, YouTube, X, a mirrored site, through an independent journalist friend. She didn't schedule it yet. She just stared at the publish button. Somewhere below the surface of her exhaustion, a younger Emma stirred. The girl in the mirror at 12, whispering happy birthday into her own camera lens, the one who'd waited for someone to notice. I see you, she whispered now, and this time they will too. In the quiet that followed her father's voice returned not a memory, but a feeling. Warm, steady, as if whispering behind her lens. You finally stepped into the frame. Jet rotors beat the dawn air into a frenzy, a metallic thrum that rattled the stained glass windows of St. Athanasius Cathedral and washed over Boston's Back Bay like a private storm. Two sleek helicopters hovered above the courtyard's marble fountain wind, shredding crimson maple leaves into confetti before the first guest even stepped out. Camera crews hired by the groom's family triangulated themselves long lenses tilting skyward to catch couture skirts flaring against the downdraft. The wedding wasn't scheduled to begin for another hour, but spectacle ignored timetables. In Margaret Tran's world, pageantry always arrived early to ensure admiration had time to ripen. Emma watched from the far curb taxi idling beside her window rolled halfway. She wore the emerald satin dress Lily's stylist had decreed bridesmaid adjacent, a color mirroring the deep greens of Sapa's terrace fields, a private joke Emma now regretted. Over her shoulder hung a vintage leather messenger bag. Inside, cushioned by foam cutouts more commonly reserved for prime lenses, rested the encrypted SSD TruthCut VF 2225 Final. 23 minutes of film sharp enough to sever relationships once the blade was drawn. She paid the driver smoothed, trembling hands down the dress's hips and stepped into the swirl of valet whistles and flashbulb strobes. The October sky was postcard blue, yet the air carried the bite of impending winter. Emma inhaled it, hoping the cold might stifle the shiver rippling beneath her ribs. She felt submerged in an aquarium lit for display, every surface polished, every stranger peering, every breath amplified. A brass quartet played Vivaldi on the cathedral steps, notes bright as champagne bubbles. Beyond them, the entrance arch bloomed with white peonies and orchids freighted in from Ecuador flowers that would wilt by nightfall but live forever in glossy spreads Margaret had pre-booked with bridal vogue. Emma's shoes clicked across limestone, each echo a countdown. She rehearsed her lines. My name will be on the list. If that failed, call Lily Tran the bride. If that failed, call my mother. The final option tasted like ash, yet she practiced it anyway. At the porter's table, a young woman with an iPad greeted her. Name, please. Emma Tran, bride's sister. The woman tapped scrolled. Her brow tightened. Another scroll. I'm sorry, could you spell the first name? Emma obliged, steady voice, though her pulse began to drum behind her eyes. More tapping, more scrolling. Finally, the woman glanced up, compassion already forming like a bruise. I don't seem to have you here. Are you perhaps with one of the vendor teams? I'm family, Emma said, words clipped a surge of heat thawing the cold she'd relied on. Behind the check-in table, two uniformed security guards shifted, drawn by the rising tension. One tall earpiece, coiled tight, stepped forward. Everything all right? Before Emma could answer, the guard's radio crackled. He listened, nodded, then turned to her with professional detachment. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to stand to the side while we clarify. The phrase stand to the side opened a vein of deja vu mountain mist, a makeshift guardrail Lily's signature scrawled across a leather folio. Emma's jaw locked. Still, she obeyed, moving to the cordoned lane where vendors unloaded equipment. A pastry chef wheeled past swans of spun sugar trembling under a glass cloche. A lighting tech shouldered an LED panel taller than Emma. She smelled sautéed shallots, saw busboys in white jackets ferrying silver platters toward the service doors. This lane was the wedding's backstage, and someone had shoved her into it like an understudy no one intended to call on stage. Helicopter rotors slowed their thunder, tapering to a hum, as VIPs emerged, senators with pocket squares, a film director rumored for next year's Oscars, social media royalty live streaming every step. The crowd's collective gaze slid right over Emma, then fixed on the arriving glamour. She felt translucent the way green screens look before footage replaces their emptiness. 10 minutes crawled. The quartet shifted to Debussy. Emma's phone buzzed with calendar alerts, her own reminders to cue ceremony B-roll if she'd been inside right now directing the house videographers. The absurdity of the alert carved a bitter smile across her face. The guard returned. "Ma'am, your name isn't on any of the guest manifests." Neutral tone eyes already scanning for the next potential disruption. "Do you have vendor credentials?" "I designed all printed media you're holding," Emma replied. She jabbed a finger at the ivory program tucked in his lapel pocket. Her initials, small but present, sat at the bottom of the typography credit. Proof hiding in plain sight. "My work is everywhere in that ballroom." The guard glanced at the program, then back. "Creative contributors were checked in earlier this morning under the production company. You weren't on that list." Because Margaret registered the company in her own name, Emma thought bitterness folding inward. She drew a breath to argue, and that's when Margaret herself appeared at the top of the steps, Lily's white train draped over one arm like the pelt of a vanquished beast. Photographers swiveled, shutters chattered. Margaret murmured something to Lily, then descended with controlled urgency. She reached the table, pressed a manicured hand to the guard's forearm. "What's the delay?" the guard explained. Margaret's expression shifted to choreographed concern. She turned to Emma, smile so polished Emma could see her own reflection in its surface. "Darling, there you are. Why didn't you go through the vendor entrance?" "I'm not a vendor," Emma said quietly. "I'm your daughter." A beat. The smile faltered barely, and Margaret's eyes flicked sideways to the gathering paparazzi. She stepped closer, voice lowered to a whisper. "Emma, please. This is not the time." "You promised I'd be inside," Emma hissed. She felt the SSD's weight in her bag solid as judgment. "You said family first." Margaret's lashes fluttered, the only crack in her composure. She placed 2 fingers on Emma's elbow, a gesture of faux intimacy guiding her aside. "Tran nha toi." "She's post-production," Margaret announced to the guard, switching to Vietnamese to soften the humiliation for English-speaking onlookers. "Ko ala hoki." Then back to Emma. "We'll sort your pass after the welcome toast. Don't make a scene. Guests are arriving." The words landed like a door slamming in an empty house. Post-production. Not sister, not maid of honor, not even vendors, at least got day rates. Post-production was invisible solitary, the room you shoved footage into so magic could happen out of sight. Emma felt her stomach ice over. Something keened behind her ribcage, the feral part that still believed against evidence that mothers protected. She stared into Margaret's eyes and saw no malice, only strategy, a chess player nudging a pawn from one square to another for board symmetry. "Of course," Emma said, voice flat. She could taste iron where she'd bitten her cheek. Wouldn't want to upset the narrative. Margaret exhaled relief, rustling her designer shawl. "Good girl. Now if you'll wait by catering, we'll bring you badges. There's a lot to manage." Lily's laughter drifted from above crystalline rehearsed. Emma craned her neck. Lily stood framed by Gothic arches, veil haloed by morning sun. She waved stage-wave beauty queen fingers, a gesture aimed at cameras, not kin. Their eyes met for half a second. Lily's smile held, but no recognition flared behind it. Just performance. Emma looked away first. She felt the moment crystallize, a perfect freeze frame destined for her film's climax, when they locked the doors on their own blood in exchange for optics. She pivoted toward the street without another word, heels ticking fast across flagstone. Margaret called her name, soft command, not plea. Emma didn't answer. The string quartet struck the opening chord of Pachelbel's canon. Applause erupted as if on cue. The wedding machine powered ahead, short one daughter, not even noticing the missing gear. Down the steps across the circle drive, Emma reached the curb beside the fountain. Water tossed sunlight in fractured patterns across her dress. She stared at her reflection, rippling in the basin-green, satin-damp eyes, jaw set like carved jade. She pressed a palm over the messenger bag, feeling the SSD's outline through leather. Truth thrummed beneath her fingertips. It weighed more than every insult disguised as endearment, every unpaid invoice masked as exposure, every door slammed with a mother's smile. She breathed once, twice, tasting gardenia and exhaust. Then she did something unexpected. She laughed. Soft at first, then fuller until the sound startled a passing usher balancing champagne flutes. The laugh carried no humor, only clarity, the sound glass makes when it surrenders to fracture, releasing hidden rainbows. She realized with volcanic calm that the barricade Margaret raised wasn't a prison wall, it was a launch pad. Being barred from the cathedral freed her from any residual responsibility to preserve their façade. She could step fully into authorship, now no chains of filial loyalty left to rattle. Emma opened her phone, scrolled to the private upload link, thumb hovering. One press would auto-publish the truth cut globally, but she paused. Not yet. Timing mattered. Impact mattered. She wanted them mid-vow, mid-smile, mid-lie when truth detonated. She set a scheduled release today, 5:17 p.m., sunset, golden hour. Symbolic symmetry, the light Margaret loved, would illuminate the darkness she'd sown. She tucked the phone away, turned her back on the cathedral, and started walking. Each step felt like writing a line of new script with her body. She didn't know where she was headed, maybe the river, maybe He's studio, maybe nowhere, but distance was the point. Separation offered perspective, and perspective sharpened focus. Behind her, bells began their peal, solemn and bright. A chevron of doves released skyward wings, catching sunbeams in choreographed purity. The crowd gasped in delight. Emma didn't look back. She let the sound fade into city noise, let memory convert it to B-roll she'd reframe later. Half a block away, she passed a child blowing bubbles. One drifted toward her, shimmered, burst against her sleeve. Fragile things ended when they met reality. Sometimes with a pop, sometimes with silence. Margaret's house of glass would soon meet its stone. Emma hailed a rideshare. While she waited, she pulled the SSD from her bag and cradled it in her palm, small, unassuming, lethal as truth. She whispered to it, half prayer, half battle cry, "Let's roll!" Then she tucked it back into the foam cradle. The car arrived. She slid inside door, thunking shut on the cathedral's distant fanfare, and gave the driver an address she wrote in real time, True Light Gallery opening soon. As the vehicle merged into traffic, the city unfurled ahead, streets, bridges, possibilities. Emma laid her head against the seat, eyes closing for the first calm blink of the day. In 7 hours, the sun would kiss the horizon, and every screen in the world could become a window into her family's shadowed attic. She wasn't post-production anymore. She was prelude to reckoning. And this time, her name would not be missing from the list. Sheets of monsoon-thick rain hammered the porte cochere of the Mount Vernon resort as though some furious god had yanked open the sky. The fountain in the circular drive churned yellow under sodium lamp statues of mythic lovers half erased by the downpour. Emma burst through the glass lobby doors, emerald gown darkening to bottle green heels skidding on marble, her single objective now reduced to escape. She no longer registered the muffled Chopin floating from the ballroom or the champagne flutes chiming like polite bells each time new VIPs arrived. She felt only the sting of cold water in her eyes, bitter as insult, and the rigid rectangle of the SSD pressing against her ribs, 23 minutes of truth that could break an empire. Outside, valets scrambled beneath black umbrellas emblazoned with the resort crest. One tried to guide Emma toward the covered walkway, but she shook him off and headed straight for the taxi queue, where a lone Prius idled, windshield wipers battling the deluge. She yanked the rear door open, collapsing into the seat with a gasp that sounded part sob, part feral growl. The driver, middle-aged skeptical, turned down his Bollywood radio and asked for an address. Emma gave her street in South Boston, though the word home suddenly felt theoretical. The car lurched forward. Rain streaks smudged city lights into fluorescent ruins. Emma's breathing hitched, then fractured, then detonated into full-body sobs. The noise startled even her raw, vowel-shredded decades of swallowed grievances ripping free in ragged syllables. She clutched her messenger bag to her chest like a flotation device, forehead pressed to the cold window. Each street lamp they passed strobed amber across her blurred reflection, making her tears look like molten metal sliding over glass. In post, she would picture this shot at 120 frames per second, rain beads leaping like reversed sparks, while a cello's low C string vibrated beneath a glitching synth arpeggio. She'd cut frames every half second to mirror the spasms of her breath. City light windshield tear her own widened eyes, the SSD raindrops, Martha Graham hands clawing at satin. A filmmaker even in collapse, she mentally storyboarded her breakdown because turning misery into craft was the oldest coping algorithm she knew. The driver kept glancing in the mirror. At a red light, he passed back a stack of fast food napkins. Emma muttered thank you, dabbed her cheeks, and tried to swallow the hysteria. But the moment she pictured Lily's veil billowing like a $20,000 flag of conquest, the sobs resurrected. She slapped a palm over her mouth as if silencing herself could stem the flood, yet new torrents surfaced: anger at Margaret's offhand dismissal, shame that she'd expected anything else, grief that her father's warmth had deserted the family the day his heart did. A notification buzzed in her clutch, an auto-generated event check-in reminder from the wedding planner. The irony carved a hollow laugh through her sobs. She deleted it and opened her encrypted cloud dashboard instead. An orange dot pulsed beside the file name, TruthCut VF 2025, final. It waited like a missile in a silo, primed, coated, but inert, until the launch key turned. Emma's thumb hovered. Her rational mind whispered about timing legal fallout, the collateral hearts who might catch shrapnel. But the storm inside her swelled against such caution. She closed the window, inhaled through her nose, held the breath to the count of 10, the way her therapist had taught her for panic attacks. The trembling settled just enough for strategy to reassert itself. She reopened a draft post on a dummy account, a conduit she'd built months earlier in anticipation of this exact rupture. The caption field contained 5 words, family or facade, choose wisely. Below it, the platform's auto-thumbnail preview showed Lily mid-twirl in Sapa's clouds, blissful and oblivious. Emma added a second line, am I a guest or blood? Then she tapped the scheduler icon and set it for immediate release upon arrival at her apartment, GPS triggered. The platform's API would recognize her IP, verify 2-factor, and blast the film simultaneously to YouTube, Vimeo, TikTok in serialized chapters and a torrent seed funneled through decentralized nodes. Redundancy was insurance. Margaret's NDAs couldn't plug every leak. The Prius merged onto the expressway. Water sheeted across asphalt, headlights refracting like prison search beams. Emma steadied her breathing and closed her eyes. In the darkness behind her lids, she saw her father teaching her to spool high-8 tape, his big hands guiding her, his voice saying, film was bottled time, but with the lid popped open, you could smell yesterday. She imagined him watching tonight's cut, imagined the sadness that would crease his eyes, but also the pride limning the edges. He'd always said truth cost, but counterfeit cost more. They exited toward Southie brick row houses crouched under street lamps, puddles shimmering gold. Emma wiped her face, patted under her eyes with the napkins until mascara streaks ceased. The car stopped at her building, a converted warehouse whose lobby smelled of stale coffee and paint thinner. She paid tip too much, then sprinted the 10 yards to the door, rain clapping applause on the aluminum awning. Her keycard beeped. The lock thunked. She was inside, soaked and steel-nerved. Her loft was a hybrid of monk's cell and post-production bay concrete floors, a single futon in the corner, and a U-shaped command center of monitors glowing blue in standby. She kicked off heels, shrugged out of the clammy dress, slipped into fleece joggers, and a threadbare college hoodie armor of another kind. Water dripped from her hair onto the SSD case. She toweled it gently, then slotted the drive into her desktop's Thunderbolt dock. The system chirped awake. LED fans spun like turbine blades. A window popped, drive recognized. Another window from her automation script, publish sequence initiated, confirm. Emma's hand hung above the mouse. The clock on the menu bar read 3:49 p.m., 2 hours until golden hour in Boston, the scheduled detonation. She could still cancel. She could still salvage some version of family. She pictured Margaret's face when police lights eventually danced across those marble steps, pictured Lily's talk show dreams curdling into tabloid fodder, pictured Mason the groom discovering the marriage highlight reel had been financed by lies. She felt a flutter of guilt, small moth-like insistent. She crushed it. Mouse click, confirm. Progress bars unfurled across 3 monitors, neon caterpillars inching rightward, upload to cloud transcode for mobile push to social APIs. Her internet screamed under the weight, fans revved, breakers hummed. She sat cross-legged on the floor back against the radiator and watched the percentages climb. Rain lashed the warehouse windows, thunder low as a cello's end pins scraping stone. In her head, that glitched cello score formed again, layered with the Doppler whoosh of distant sirens, electronica turning storm into symphony. At 4:02 p.m. Eastern, the dashboard flashed green, multi-deploy complete. A final prompt asked, "Are you sure you want to make this file public?" She typed, "Yes." Hit enter. The screen blinked white, then settled on an analytics panel. 0 views, 0 likes, 0 anything. The quiet before the earthquake. 5 seconds later, the first ping registered someone in Singapore had clicked the YouTube link. Then a phone in Sao Paulo, then Berlin. The counter rocketed 100, 1,000, 8,400. Emma refreshed. The digits multiplied faster than her gaze could tally. Trending algorithms stirred, shoved the video towards sidebars labeled breaking and must watch. Hashtags materialized, #family or facade, #Tran truth, #cloud bride lie. Within 11 minutes, the view count crossed 1 million. She opened the video in a private tab, heart drumming. There it was, Lily spinning in crystalline mist, perfect bride against perfect sunrise. Then the smash cut, Cedric sliding the flash drive into his pocket. Audience gasp. Subtitles rolling, Lily's whispered, "Exposure is everything," under her breath. Another cut. Margaret telling Emma off-camera family is a stage. The audio level's raw but intelligible. Emma had left in the shakiness, the camera whip, the imperfect focus. That imperfection read as authenticity proof the footage hadn't been stage managed. Halfway through the edit, spiraled into split screens on the left, Lily's polished promos. On the right, Emma's handheld glimpses Margaret negotiating with a brand rep while powdering Lily's nose. Text overlays like footnotes. Footage originally shot by Emma Tran licensed without consent. Then the flowchart animated money funneling through shell corporations. The music dropped to sub-bass throbs, heartbeat, thick cello harmonics shrieking above. Emma saw commenters cascade down the scrolling feed. "This is insane! Oh my god, I feel sick! Pay your sister!" At 4:19 p.m., Twitter's trending panel placed Had Family or Façade at number 3 worldwide above a celebrity divorce and below an election debate. By 4:27 p.m., it hit #1, propelled by influencers cutting reaction videos in real time, split-screen tears, furious monologues about stolen labor capitalism, immigrant family pressure, glamorous abuse. Emma watched one influencer in Lagos caption her reaction. "When success is minted with someone else's love and felt hot tears bloom again, but these tasted different, cathartic, carbonated." Back in the analytics dashboard, a blizzard of red error icons flickered copyright claims filed by Starlight Media Holdings. Automated takedown requests. Emma grinned wolfish she had anticipated this. The torrent seeds were already live mirrored across decentralized storages. Even if platforms folded, the file was Hydra-headed. She opened her phone, messages stacked like dominoes. "Hwaying? Holy hell, 2 million in 20 minutes? You okay? Unknown. This is Paragon Lux legal. Remove defamatory content immediately." Lily 20. Missed calls, then a text. "What have you done, Mom? Emma, cease this tantrum. We can fix it, but you must delete now. Dad's old college friend saw the film. Richard would be proud of your courage." Emma closed them all. She typed one reply, but not to Margaret, not to Lily. She sent it to Hoy, phase 1 complete. "Save everything." He responded with a lock emoji and rocket emoji, no words needed. At 4:38 p.m., CNN Business tweeted a link, "Wedding scandal luxury brand accused of buying stolen footage, licensing deal implodes." The article embedded Emma's video crediting independent filmmaker Emma Tran. She whispered the phrase, "independent filmmaker," and it felt like discovering a new muscle that had always existed beneath atrophy. By 4:45 p.m., 36 newsrooms had requested interviews. Her inbox spilled over with subject lines, "The sister behind the viral expose. We'd like your side of the story exclusive with Emma Tran." She bookmarked none. Instead, she opened a blank document titled Post-Release Plan and began jotting bullet points. 1. Secure legal counsel, ask Hi's cousin. 2. Backups to off-site cold storage. 3. Statement of intent, focus on exploitation, not revenge. 4. Leave space for survivors of family abuse to share stories, build community beyond scandal. While she typed, the cello synth soundtrack still thundered in her head, synced to notifications dinging like hi-hats. She pictured viewers across time zones, a bakery cashier in Manila watching on break, a law student in Paris pausing case notes to retweet, a grandmother in Ohio wiping tears because the line, "Am I a guest?" or blood echoed something her own daughter once said. That line arrived at the film's final frame. Emma replayed it now, the camera panning an empty cathedral pew reserved for vendors, spotlight illuminating a place card with her name crossed out. The frame paused. Her recorded voice asked, half whisper, half demand, "Am I a guest or blood?" The question held for 3 long seconds before the screen cut to void black. Credits scrolled all names except hers, shrinking to 50% opacity, barely readable, symbolizing how her family tried to fade her to gray. The YouTube comments for that moment alone multiplied blood. "You're the main character. Guessed she built the house." Someone quoted James Baldwin. "The place in which I'll fit will not exist until I make it." The quote rose to most liked. Emma leaned back against the radiator, exhaustion pooling under her skin like warm syrup. She realized the rain had stopped. The world outside her grimy windows glowed gold, as if the storm had been a baptism, not a burial. She closed her eyes and listened not to digital pings but to her own heartbeat steady for the first time in months. A faint knock rattled the loft door. She stiffened, but when she checked the security cam feed, it was only her neighbor Mrs. Donnelly holding a casserole and looking confused. Emma didn't answer. Instead, she searched the apartment for the one relic that mattered tonight, her father's high-8 camcorder. She found it on a shelf, battery long dead, casing scuffed. She weighed it in her palms, feeling the heft of analog years. "We did it," she told him, or the idea of him voice barely louder than a breath. Her phone vibrated again. A screenshot Bloomberg headline reading, "Paragon Lux stock plunges after wedding video controversy." Another screenshot from TikTok. Lily's face mid-cry livestream paused, hearts pouring down the screen like warped snow. Emma didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply felt the axis tilt. Power for the first time resided on her side of the lens. She placed the Hi 8 beside her monitor and opened a new project bin labeled Aftermath Footage. The story wasn't finished. Fallout would provide fresh angles, new cuts. But that was tomorrow's reel. Tonight, the world tilted toward her truth, and she would let that fact seep into her bones. At 5:12 p.m., the sun finally grazed the skyline, bathing the loft in molten tangerine. On-screen view counts ticked past 6 million. Outside, sirens wailed, maybe emergency, maybe tabloid vans racing to the resort. Emma stood stretching sore muscles, walked to the cracked window, and pushed it open. Cool air kissed her damp hair. Somewhere across the city, a cathedral bell rang for evening mass. Its echo sounded oddly like applause. "Guest or blood?" she murmured, tasting the words one last time. Then she answered herself, voice strong enough to carry through rain-clean air, "I'm the author." The wind whipped the declaration away toward the setting sun, scattering it over a Boston that, like Emma, would never see her family quite the same again. The morning after, the city awoke like a stagehand pulling back the curtain on an unfinished set. Headlines bloomed across screens, not in whispers, but roars. Hashtag #LilyLie and hashtag Margaret manipulates trended globally by 8:12 a.m., flanked by screenshots of Emma's truth-cut reaction clips of influencers weeping or screaming "no way," and slowed-down edits of the damning moments, Lily signing the undisclosed contract, Margaret dismissing Emma as post-production. The sheen was cracking. No amount of contour or lighting could obscure the rot beneath. At Paragon Lux's downtown office, a press release hit the wires before the coffee brewed. "Due to unforeseen contractual misrepresentation, we are terminating our collaboration with Lily Tran effective immediately. We stand against exploitation in all forms." The phrasing was surgical. Their logo disappeared from Lily's socials within the hour. In Los Angeles, the television network behind the Lily Hour announced an internal ethics review and indefinite postponement of the pilot premiere. Executive producers deleted their congratulatory posts. One by one, the bricks holding up Margaret Tran's empire loosened. What once looked like a dynasty now resembled a carefully lit crime scene. Emma sat cross-legged on her futon laptop and her lap phone, lighting up every 10 seconds with alerts, threats, invitations, condolences, or combinations thereof. The film had crossed 7 million views overnight, mirrored across every platform, and carried by hundreds of reaction channels. Some creators dissected it like scholars, others cried. One made a TikTok remix of Margaret's family as a stage line into a club beat that racked up 500,000 likes in 6 hours. But beneath the viral swell, a darker wave rose. At 11:13 a.m., an email arrived from Pritchard & Lowe LLP, subject line, "Immediate legal action takedown demand." Attached was a cease and desist, its wording cold and condescending. Phrases like intentional defamation, malicious misrepresentation, and unauthorized use of likeness bled down the page in legalese that tried to rewrite what Emma had lived. She read the entire thing without blinking. Then a second email followed, this time from a private address labeled mtrn@visiontrangroup.com. No greeting, no signature, just, "Enough, Emma. You've made your point. Take it down before you destroy everything your father built." She stared at the screen. Something shifted behind her eyes. Margaret hadn't signed it as mom. Her cursor hovered over the reply field. She typed, "He built love. You built theater." She hit send. At 12:05 p.m., Lily broke her silence. A live stream, shaky and handheld, framed her in soft makeup and neutral tones, trying to invoke vulnerability. Her voice trembled just enough. She said phrases like, "I never meant to hurt anyone," and "My sister and I have always had a complicated relationship, and this isn't the full picture," she cried at minute 3, but the comments scrolled faster than her PR consultant could moderate. "Apologize without excuses. Where's the stolen footage money? Is Emma even in the wedding photo album? Too little, too staged." By 12:18, the stream cut. Lily's pinned apology tweet had been retweeted over 100,000 times with quote tweets like, "Emma deserved better," and "Gaslight, Gatekeep, Girlboss, the trilogy of Margaret Tran." The hashtag #StandWithEmma began to climb. Emma turned off her phone. She pulled open the encrypted folder marked Receipts, a digital vault she'd built in quiet fury over the past 3 years. It housed screenshots of contracts signed with invisible carbon copies emails where Margaret forwarded her documentary treatments to Lily's agent voice memos of conversations in car rides when Emma wasn't supposed to be listening. At 1:22 p.m., she uploaded every file to an open-access public Google Drive and tweeted the link with a single sentence. "You want receipts? Here's the family ledger." No hashtags, no emojis, just documentation sharp and clear. By 2:10 p.m., the folder had 80,000 views. By 2:45, a viral video lawyer on YouTube posted a breakdown. Yes, Emma owns the copyright. No, this is not defamation. Yes, she has grounds to countersue. At 3:15, an email popped up from alex@alexschulmanlaw.com. "I watched your film. You shouldn't be bullied into silence. I'd be honored to represent you pro bono." Attached was a letter of engagement. Beneath that, a list of 10 other lawyers offering the same. Emma's hand trembled not from fear, but from the ache of a held breath finally let go. She scrolled to Alex's signature. Harvard Law, Emmy-nominated documentary consultant. She signed the agreement in silence. Her inbox overflowed with stories from strangers, daughters erased by their families, sisters edited out of wedding reels, queer filmmakers whose footage had been misused, first-generation artists whose parents stole their credits. The truth cut had detonated more than a wedding. It had opened a door to the unspoken. The comments read like confessionals. People weren't just watching Emma, they were seeing themselves in her. At 4:01 p.m., the network that once touted Lily as the voice of tomorrow issued an updated statement. "We do not tolerate artistic theft or familial manipulation. The project is canceled." Canceled, not paused, not under review. Emma closed her eyes. In her mind's theater, she rewound to the night before, standing at the cathedral curb in the rain feeling erased. Now she realized the truth. Margaret had spent her life auditioning Lily for the world, but she'd cast the wrong daughter. The story didn't belong to the stage. It belonged to the shadows where Emma had quietly been filming all along. The glamour collapsed not in flames, but in silence. Emma sat with that silence, watching the empire crack. And for the first time, she didn't flinch. Neon buzz sputtered overhead like a dying insect casting epileptic pulses of magenta across the barren loft Emma once called her pop-up gallery. The plywood walls still bore stray splatters of test paint from an installation she'd abandoned months prior, ghosts of a project that now felt as quaint as finger painting. She lay flat on the cold floorboards, arms splayed, face angled toward the ceiling, where each blink of faulty gas inside the tube revealed tiny cobwebs she'd never noticed. Breath came shallow ribs fluttering beneath the weight of 48 sleepless hours and a lifetime of deferred grief. Her phone was muted face down beside her, but she felt the vibration every few seconds, a phantom tremor through the planks, as though the outside world kept slamming its fist on the door. A drop of condensation fell from the HVAC vent and struck her cheek. It startled her enough to remind her she was still corporeal. She rolled to one side, winced as a cramp seized her calf, then forced herself upright. The neon strobed again on her silhouette, etching against paint-peeled brick, off nothing but outline in the dark. Even the light couldn't decide how visible she deserved to be. She shuffled to the kitchenette, poured water into a chipped ceramic mug, and downed it in one greedy swallow. The exhaustion pulled at her limbs like lead bracelets, but a deeper fatigue, psychic marrow deep, weighted her thoughts. The internet called her a hero. Talk show panels dissected her courage, yet inside she felt less like Joan of Arc and more like the match that had lit the pyre and then burned alongside it. By late morning, rain slicked the gallery windows, muting city noise into a dull hush. Emma changed into jeans and a faded tour crew t-shirt, stuffed a notebook into her tote, and stepped back into daylight. She arrived at Dr. Rivera's office with damp hair curling against her temple and exhaustion haloing her eyes. The therapist greeted her with chamomile steam and the kind of silence that offers more space than any words. When Emma tried to speak, her throat locked. Dr. Rivera waited, hands folded, the secondhand dignity of thrift store furniture lending the room an intimacy that Manhattan penthouses could never buy. Finally, Emma rasped, "Everyone says I betrayed my family." "Who says that?" Dr. Rivera countered, voice textured like river stones. Her inflection made the query a scalpel precise, non-lethal. Emma's lips twitched, the ghost of a cynical smile. "Margaret, Lily's publicist, a handful of tabloids calling me Judas with a Steadicam." The therapist tilted her head. "Do you believe you betrayed them?" "I stole back what they stole first. Does that count?" She couldn't keep the bitterness from scraping every syllable. Dr. Rivera leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Emma, you didn't break a bond. You broke a silence. There's a difference." The sentence lodged somewhere behind Emma's sternum, hot and startling. She'd walked in expecting self-defense tactics. Instead, she felt a permission slip slide into her palm, invisible but unmistakable. "You may stop apologizing." "I'm so tired," she whispered. Tears welled, but she blinked them clear. "People online keep asking me to do interviews. They want me to tear my family apart on live TV. They cheer every new sponsor that drops Lily. And she swallowed. "I can't tell if I'm helping anyone or just feeding a bonfire." Dr. Rivera considered that. Wildfires burn forests, but they also clear ground for new growth. Your responsibility is to tend what grows after, not to douse the fire that revealed the rot. Emma exhaled, half sob, half laugh. "That sounds like something Dad would have said." She clutched her notebook. "I need to put that somewhere." Try the therapist tapped her temple, putting it here first, then on paper. That afternoon, Emma returned to the gallery, armed with a stack of Post-its, a yoga mat she found behind a speaker cabinet, and a new prescription for short-term sleep medication she hoped never to use. She rolled out the mat in the center of the empty room. Neon overhead fluttered again, but she left it on, deciding even imperfect light was still light. She set a timer for 10 minutes, sank cross-legged palms up, and closed her eyes. At first, her brain screamed headlines, hashtags, cease and desists. Her mother's voice clipped like cold shears, but she counted each inhale, each exhale, and when storms rose, she named them anger, fear, shame, and let them pass like subway cars. 10 minutes stretched elastic. By the time the phone chimed, her pulse had slowed, and the inside of her skull felt a degree less acoustically hellish. She opened the notebook. On the first page, she wrote, "Silence wears lipstick," a reference to the way Margaret could brand cruelty in gold leaf. Beneath it, "I will curate spaces where silence loses audience." Each statement bled into the next pages, turning under ink that seemed to flow faster than thoughts. Memory fragments bubbled up 8-year-old Emma filming insects on their balcony while Margaret scolded her for dirty knees. 14-year-old Emma editing Lily's audition reel overnight because college scouts need polish. She wrote until her wrist cramped, then kept writing. Words were lumber. She was building scaffolding from the wreckage. Evening bled into violet. "Hui texted you alive." She sent a selfie, glossy eyes, but smiling, framed by flickering neon. 10 minutes later, a knock rattled the roll-up door. She slid the industrial lock aside. Hui stood with 2 cardboard boxes, one full of pad thai, the other stuffed with USB drives, and a freshly built NAS. Behind him, Marisol, her colorist friend from film school, Gabe, a DIT who lived out of a van, and Zuri, a street photographer known for capturing queer joy in alleyway murals. They set up impromptu picnic tables from unused light stands, eating noodles straight from cartons. Conversation ricocheted, smart, irreverent, soul-soothing. Gabe suggested screening archival footage on the blank wall. Marisol proposed color grading sessions as public workshops. Teach people what manipulation looks like on a waveform. Zuri wanted to project Lily's contract on the outside of the building like guerrilla graffiti. Emma listened, notebook, open pen flying. The idea coalesced True Light, a hybrid gallery and community cinema where truth-telling wasn't just content but praxis. She pictured a monthly open reel Night Survivors, bringing phone footage, diary clips, 8mm reels found in attics. Free color correction stations, a wall where visitors could pin their own micro-confessions on index cards under blacklight. She gestured to the cracked plaster. "We leave the scars visible. Paint around them in neon outlines. Show where the plaster failed, then celebrate the fix." Marisol clinked her chopsticks against her beer bottle. "Highlight the gold seams kintsugi walls." Hui fired up the NAS, transferring every piece of evidence Emma had into redundant RAID arrays. "No one's deleting this history," he declared. Zuri spray-painted the words, "This room owes no silence" on butcher paper and taped it above the fuse box. Around midnight, they rolled back the metal door and carried folding chairs to the sidewalk. Cars hissed past on rain-slick asphalt. The skyline blinked in corporate blues and reds. Emma aimed a portable projector at the gallery facade. The first frame, her father dancing in that old family clip, turning Margaret under the kitchen light before Emma's birthday cake. Passers-by slowed, some stopping, drawn to the grainy warmth. Then came footage of Lily's mountain contract. Gasps rippled. A stranger asked, "Is this real?" Emma replied, "It's the truest thing I own." The small crowd grew. Someone from the neighborhood brought hot chocolate, passing cups down the line. Another offered cushions. The film reel looped, and when it ended, a teenager asked if it could play again for her friend arriving in 10 minutes. Emma obliged. Hui nudged her. "Gallery's basically open." Emma laughed, a sound dizzy with relief. Neon overhead sputtered one last time, then steadied, glowing constant, as if conceding her right to unwavering light. She stared at the sign Zuri had drafted in chalk on the sidewalk. True light soft opening today. Stories welcome. The words blurred. Tears this time tasted of salt and electricity, not acid. She wiped her cheeks, inhaled night air fragrant with petrichor and cheap cocoa, and felt the storm inside her reorganize into a quieter, steadier weather system. Not calm, she suspected true calm was a myth, but navigable. She could sail in this. Later, alone again in the gallery, she placed her notebook at the center of the floor, opened to the page that read, "Wildfires clear land for new growth." Beneath, she drew a rectangle, a doorway, then wrote, "True light is a door that refuses to shut." She closed the book, rolled up the yoga mat, and turned off the neon. For a breath, darkness reigned. Then she switched on a single LED clamp light aimed upward. Its beam caught dust motes dancing like tiny defiant constellations. She watched them swirl, thought of every story yet to be told, and whispered into the hush. "Let's begin." Spotlights sliced the dusk like searchlights as True Light Gallery opened its roll-up door for the first time. The converted warehouse on East First Street still smelled faintly of varnish and sawdust, but inside every surface had been scrubbed into the aesthetic Emma called visible scars, exposed brick lacquered cracks, traced in gold epoxy screw heads left uncovered so the building's skeleton showed. 100 folding chairs faced a 16-foot projection wall, yet the first object that caught the eye was not the screen, but a pedestal bathed in a single cone of warm light. On that pedestal sat her father's old high-8 camcorder lens cap, off rubber eye cup cracked. Behind it, a black and white portrait Richard Tran mid-laugh, crow's feet etched by decades of half-finished jokes. Beneath the frame, a brass plaque bore one sentence, "Frame what matters." Guests entered in a slow trickle at 6:05 p.m. Students in thrifted denim gray-templed activists, mothers holding children's hands. Each received a skeleton key spray-painted matte white. Some looked puzzled until they saw the barren wall to the right of the screen, a vast tableau of pegboard hooks waiting like blank sheet music. On the wall, a handwritten sign read, "Trust wall, hang your key, leave your silence." By 6:20, chatter turned to hush as people realized what the keys meant. One by one, they approached finding empty hooks and sliding their keys into place. The nylon clicks rang like muted typewriter strokes. Emma watched from behind a lighting truss, heart swelling and cracking at once. Every key represented a story someone trusted her to hold. This she thought is communion. When the chairs were nearly full, Hui gave her a cue thumbs up from the back terrace. Emma stepped onto the low stage in jeans and a linen blazer. The hush thickened. Cameras lifted, but she lifted a palm. "No recording tonight, please. We're here to be present, not post." Surprisingly, phones lowered. Maybe people were tired of screens telling them what intimacy looked like. She welcomed them voice steady, despite the tremor in her knees. She dedicated the space to truths we frame for ourselves when nobody else will. Applause rose not thunderous, but fierce. She thanked the volunteers who had sanded floors, the neighbors who had donated extension cords, the stranger who'd mailed a jar of film canisters containing anonymous 8mm memories. Then she dimmed house lights. The inaugural program was a collage 30-second microdocs submitted online in the past week, stories of undocumented laundromats, grandmothers who rebuilt lives after hurricanes, queer dancers claiming alleyways as stages. Each clip arrived preceded by the filmmaker's first name only. Anonymity was armor. After 12 minutes, the reel ended on a still frame. The empty vendor pew from Lily's wedding, Emma's name crossed out. The audience gasped. Many recognized it from social feeds, but the theater lighting and 4K projection made humiliation feel bodily. On cue, the lights rose half-mast enough for reflection, not escape. Emma inhaled, ready to invite dialogue when her phone vibrated. She shouldn't have felt it, but crises always found muscle memory. A text from an unknown number flashed, "Turn on channel 8. Mom's talking." She pocketed the phone, forced a smile back to the audience. "Bathrooms are behind you, transcripts near the door," she said, then stepped off stage like a puppet whose strings had been clipped. In the loading bay, she retrieved a backstage monitor tethered to old airwaves. Static hissed, then color bars resolved into a studio set. Margaret Tran sat opposite, a syndicated morning show host, eyes ringed red, perfect blowout undone at the ends. Beneath her chyron read, "Exclusive mother speaks out. My daughter's betrayal." Emma felt bile rise, but she raised the volume. Margaret's voice quavered. "Emma, she used to be such a sweet girl. I don't know what turned her. We love her. Of course we love her, but she published private footage, distorted our family for clicks. Tears shimmered. The host leaned in. Do you consider her a traitor? Margaret nodded once, an almost imperceptible tilt. I consider her lost. Emma's knees buckled. She caught the edge of a storage crate and steadied herself. She should have predicted this Margaret weaponizing tears on national television, rewriting maternal neglect as heartbreak. Yet the sight still stung like antiseptic on raw skin. Steps echoed down the hallway. Emma killed the monitor. Lily emerged under flickering security lights. No entourage, no makeup artist, just joggers and an oversized hoodie pulled to her knuckles, hair matted from hours of restless fingers. Dark circles turned her eyes into eclipse crescents. Emma, she said, voice hoarse. We intercepted 3 paces behind, but Emma raised a hand. It's okay. She turned to Lily. The hallway felt like neutral territory, LED flicker the smell of old paint. No cameras. Lily shook her head, raised her palms to show emptiness. I left my phone in the lift. My PR team doesn't know I'm here. Emma studied her sister's face, creased mascara tracks swollen eyelids. The architecture of performance was gone, leaving only scaffolding. For a moment, she saw the girl who once taught her how to braid hair using a Barbie as model. She also saw the woman who had monetized her love. What do you want, Lily? To talk. Emma nodded toward the gallery, but kept walking, leading Lily to a side office with paint-spattered floors and 2 wooden stools. He remained at the door, arms crossed but silent. Inside, Emma closed the door, flicked on a desk lamp. No cameras, no stage lights, just tungsten glow and unadorned faces. Lily sat, hands clasped between her knees, shoulders trembling. She swallowed. I thought you'd come to me first, before you exploded everything. Exploded. Emma leaned against a filing cabinet. I tried on that mountain. You chose exposure over honesty. I was terrified, Lily whispered. Mom, she told me this deal was survival, that networks only want perfect stories. Her eyes brimmed. I knew you were hurt, but I kept thinking we'd fix it later after the wedding, after the pilot. There's always a later right until there isn't. Emma folded her arms. Silence swelled heavy as humid air. She wanted to scream that fear doesn't excuse theft. She wanted to list every late fee, every night alone in editing rooms so Lily could shine. But Dr. Rivera's words surfaced. Didn't break a bond. You broke a silence. She decided not to fill the silence with more rage. I set one condition, Emma said quietly. No cameras, no rehearsed lines, so start without them. Lily rubbed her palms together. Mom says you made us villains. Emma cocked an eyebrow. Villains usually make themselves. I think she's scared, Lily said. She's never had the camera turned on her before. A pause. Neither have I. Emma touched the SSD in her pocket, a newer drive. Not the truth cut, but an archive of unseen footage Lily in college crying after a failed audition. Lily defending Emma from bullies in middle school. Margaret once praising Emma's first short film before pivoting to Lily's pageant schedule. She hadn't used any of it. She'd chosen not to weaponize everything. Why are you here? Lily damaged control. A sympathy photo op. Lily's face crumpled. Because I don't know who I am without applause, and I thought maybe you did. The confession landed like frost on warm glass, unexpected forming patterns Emma couldn't decode. She exhaled through her mouth, counted heartbeats. I'm figuring it out, she admitted. But you can't do it in this building if you're still scripting your emotions. Lily nodded, tears slipping free. Then can I stay for the screening? Just watch? No VIP seat? No acknowledgement? I just want to see what truth looks like when it's not filtered through PR. Emma weighed the request. The gallery was sanctuary built for those willing to bring their raw selves. Could Lily honor that? She looked into her sister's eyes, bloodshot, unguarded, searching. For the first time, Emma didn't see mirrors of her mother's ambition. She saw a girl adrift in a reputation she'd inherited like heavy jewelry. Okay, Emma said, but you hang a key on the wall like everyone else. And you sit in the back? Lily nodded, a tremor of gratitude flashing. Emma turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Mom is on television calling me a traitor. She begged me to go, Lily muttered. I said no. Emma swallowed a knot. Then decide who writes your story now, Mom, the tabloids or you. Lily drew a breath that seemed to weigh her whole torso. I'll find my own frame, she said. When they stepped back into the main gallery, the next reel had just begun. The chairs were packed now, people standing along walls. Someone had set up a small table with a guest book titled, What Truth Means to Me. Signatures and sketches sprawled across pages like rebellious vines. Lily hesitated at the threshold, then approached the pegboard. She slid a white key from Emma's tray, held it to her chest a moment, then hung it on an empty hook labeled 57. She pressed her fingertip to the metal as if leaving a fingerprint would make the gesture more real. No one seemed to recognize her, or if they did, they showed mercy by letting anonymity stand. Emma took her place at the back. Huai lifted an eyebrow. "You okay?" She gave a small nod. He pressed play. The lights dimmed and the screen filled with new voices, stories not of betrayal but of resilience. A Syrian tailor in Queens sewing pride flags from war-scarred fabric. A coal miner's granddaughter in West Virginia staging a puppet show about air quality. An 82-year-old ballerina performing pliés on a subway platform. True light flickered across their faces, inviting the audience into lives previously backstage. As frames shifted, Emma sensed Lily trembling beside her. Not from fear, but from recognition. Perhaps realizing truth's spotlight was cooler, gentler than the burning Klieg lights of glossy media. When a clip played of Emma's father teaching young Emma to adjust white balance in their dim kitchen, Lily's breath hitched. She reached for Emma's hand but stopped midway, palm hovering. Emma hesitated, then met her halfway fingers interlacing not tightly but enough. It felt like holding a relic made of delicate uranium, dangerous, luminous, requiring care. On screen, the father chuckled, telling child Emma, "Picture in your head before you press record. That way, even if the world shakes, your focus stays true." The audience murmured warm laughter. Emma felt Lily wipe her cheek. She didn't pull away. When the house lights rose, keys glimmered white against the board hundreds now, a snowy, constellated field. People queued to share reflections, hugging strangers. Emma watched from the aisle, Lily's hand still loosely enveloping hers, and realized the storm inside her had quieted to a workable drizzle. She wouldn't call it forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe never. But she recognized a different word, blooming one Dr. Rivera might label integration, the ability to stand in tangled history without letting it choke future growth. Reporters camped outside, but Emma instructed volunteers to usher guests through a side exit, no cameras beyond the door. Tonight belonged to the keys, the stories, the rawness. Margaret's TV tears still streamed across endless feeds, but inside True Light, no one played that channel. Emma knew retribution would keep circling lawsuits, op-eds, podcast think pieces, but she also knew the gallery had become more than a defense. It was now a living organism powered by communal narrative. Every key on the wall was a promise she intended to guard. She took the mic one last time, voice hoarse but resolute. "True Light will open every Thursday for now," she told the crowd. "Bring stories, artifacts, questions. There is space." Applause. Not explosive, sustained grounding. Lily's hands joined the clapping, tentative at first, then firm. Backstage, Emma caught her sister's eye. "No cameras," she reminded. Lily managed a weary smile. "No cameras," she echoed. It was not reconciliation. It was a first unscored scene, no director, no lines. For tonight, that was enough. The conference suite on the 24th floor of the Prudential Tower had been built for M&A deals worth billions, teak wall panels glowing like cognac. A boardroom table so long it required 2 overhead fixtures to avoid visible shadow seams, and a skyline view engineered to remind litigants that Boston's concrete arteries pulsed beneath their feet, that consequences here always found tributaries downstream. Today, the room hosted a more intimate volatility. 3 blood-tangled women, 2 lawyers, and the gravity of a family war televised worldwide. Emma entered first, flanked by Alex Schulman, the pro bono attorney, who had materialized like a guardian algorithm the moment Truth Cut detonated. He carried a leather folio bulging with tabs, but Emma carried something heavier, an archival storage box labeled Renunciation, Reclamation. Inside lay color-coded contracts, forensic accountant spreadsheets, and the original high-8 tape of her father dancing in kitchen lamplight, proof that love had once held jurisdiction in their household. The mediator, Judge Maribel Hovey, retired, still razor-eyed, offered a curt nod and gestured to the far side of the table. Emma sat palms flat, heartbeat steady. She had spent the dawn meditating on a yoga mat between paint-speckled walls, repeating Dr. Rivera's mantra, "I am not burning bridges. I am refusing arson." The words still vibrated in her ribcage like tuning forks. At precisely 9:07 a.m., the door swung wide. Margaret Tran swept in her Chanel suit, a shade of penitential charcoal face devoid of the television tears that had soaked talk show couches the week before. Behind her, lily-hovered hair scraped into a low-knot hoodie exchanged for a muted blazer borrowed from a stylist who'd since terminated contract for personal brand misalignment. Margaret's counsel, a silver-haired litigator named Prescott Hale, placed a crocodile briefcase on the table like an unsheathed weapon. Papers rustled, chairs scraped. For a moment, no one breathed. Judge Hovey broke the silence. We are here under Massachusetts Rule 17 for voluntary mediation. Records sealed unless parties mutually agree otherwise. If this fails, litigation proceeds Monday. Understood. A chorus of nods. Ms. Tran the younger. The judge's gaze flicked to Emma. You requested this session. State your objectives. Emma drew a breath long enough to ground tectonic plates. She opened her folio, slid 3 stapled packets across the lacquered wood, 1 each for Margaret, Lily, and Prescott. These are my settlement terms, she said, voice clean as temple bells. Non-negotiable. Hale adjusted half-moon glasses, scanned the first page. His brows climbed, amusement thinning into alarm. Margaret tilted her head silent. Lily's fingers fidgeted under the table. Emma summarized each clause, a hammer blow delivered in measured cadence. 1. Public apology. Margaret Tran to issue a televised statement within 14 days. Script provided in Exhibit B acknowledging emotional neglect, unauthorized exploitation of creative work, and defamation of character. 2. Emma Tran Women in Film Scholarship. Minimum seed endowment of $500,000 audited annually, providing grants to emerging female directors from marginalized backgrounds. Board of trustees to include Emma and 2 independent industry professionals. Margaret may not hold any governance role. 3. Covenant on use of likeness. Margaret and Lily shall not monetize Emma's name, image, or any footage shot by Emma without written consent, and a minimum 25% gross royalty to Emma or her designate charity. Retroactive to date of father's death, binding in perpetuity. 4. Revocation of story rights. Starlight Media Holdings relinquishes all options on Emma's life story. Any derivative adaptations require her sole approval. 5. Legal costs. Defendants cover all mediation and litigation expenses. Prescott slapped the packet shut. This is extortion masked as magnanimity, he said. Emma met his glare. It's restitution. Judge Hovey raised a palm. Counsel, you'll respond after client review. She turned to Margaret. Miss Tran, do you need recess? Margaret's hands clasped on the table, knuckles blanching. The room waited air thick with the scent of lemon polish and suppressed rage. Outside, gulls wheeled over the Charles, their cries muffled by double glazing. Margaret inhaled, lips trembling at the edges. I built everything for this family, she said, voice low as though speaking to herself. Every sponsorship, every stage light. Emma leaned forward. You built a brand. Families are not brands. Hale intervened. We dispute the factual basis. Mr. Hale, Judge Hovey snapped. Client speaks. Margaret's gaze shifted to Lily, then back to Emma. Something fissured behind her eyes. Regret, maybe, or recognition of a chessboard tipping. The scholarship, she murmured, bears your name. Will that not tie you forever to this spectacle? It ties me to hope, Emma replied. Not to you. A muscle danced along Margaret's jaw. She turned to Lily. Say something. Lily's shoulders curled inward. She opened her packet, thumbed to the signature line. Eyes glistening, she whispered, Mom, we caused this. She produced a fountain pen Emma recognized, Cedric's silver pen, the one that had first inked betrayal in Sapa's clouds. The symbolism felt surgical. Lily placed pen to document handshaking. Margaret's chair screeched back. You will ruin us, she hissed. Mom, Lily breathed. We're already ruined. Emma's offering a way to build something else. Judge Hovey watched impassive as marble. Emma slid a supplementary page forward. There's an addendum, she said softly, voice for Margaret alone. Clause 6. After public apology, I will release a statement clarifying that Lily acted under undue influence and has taken corrective action. She paused. Your name will appear nowhere. Margaret's breath hitched. Why help her? Because she's my sister, Emma replied, and because cycles end when someone chooses different. Silence. Rain began tapping the window, soft percussion atop taut nerves. Hale bent toward Margaret, whispering counsel. She listened, stare fixed on her own clasped hands as though they were strangers tethered to her wrists. Finally, she exhaled a shuddering sigh like glass cooling after forge. I'll apologize on one condition, she said. You promise not to release any additional footage that humiliates us further. Emma considered. Images flashed, Margaret dismissing a teenage Emma's first festival award as practice. Lily, sneering at Emma's thrift store shoes during a red carpet fitting. She closed her eyes. Those ghosts didn't need exorcising. They needed burial. Agreed, she said. No further releases unless you breach this settlement. Judge Hovey nodded. Add protective clause. Both parties sign. Hale scribbled amendments, pages rustling like restless wings. Lily signed, first tears slipping onto the paper, feathering ink. Margaret's pen hovered, tip quivering. Emma watched the moment her mother's signature curved, once familiar calligraphy, now an artifact. When the last stroke landed, Margaret dropped the pen as though it burned. Judge Hovey gathered documents. Settlement reached. The court will seal until public apology airs. She stood, gravity released. I'm done here. As the judge exited, Emma's legs weakened. Adrenaline drained, leaving exhaustion's hollow. She steadied herself on the table. Lily stepped forward, eyes swollen. Thank you, she whispered. Emma gave a weary nod. The scholarship board meets in a month, she said. Applications open in spring. Lily's lips twitched, a broken smile soldered by hope. She turned to Margaret, but their mother stared at Boston's skyline face unreadable. Emma followed her gaze. Sailboats speckled the river like errant commas punctuation to a sentence still being written. Hale cleared his throat, gathering briefcases. Margaret pivoted, meeting Emma's eye for the first unfiltered second that day. Inside that glance, Emma read storms, anger, fear, perhaps a seed of something softer, but storms nonetheless. Margaret said nothing, simply inclined her head, the smallest nod she had ever bestowed. Then she walked out, heels echoing down the marble corridor until silence reclaimed the air. Emma sank into the chair, Lily vacated, heart ricocheting. She pressed fingertips to eyelids, felt tears she refused to let fall. Today wasn't triumph, it was triage. Yet triage meant survival, and survival meant possibility. Alex Schulman approached, voice gentle. You did well. She managed a brittle laugh. You mean we're not bankrupt? Quite the opposite. He placed a signed agreement on top of the archival box. A $500,000 seed for future filmmakers, that's ROI I can live with. I can live. She traced her father's camcorder etched on the box lid. I hope he can too. Alex packed files, then paused. What will you do next? Emma pictured the white pegboard walls blooming with keys, the projector throwing strangers' truths onto brick, the scholarship team reviewing reels shot on borrowed phones. She pictured Lily sitting in the back row, hoodie drawn, watching her own story from an audience seat for once. And she pictured Margaret, maybe months from now, maybe never, walking through True Light stores, finding her daughter's camera under gentle spotlight, and understanding it was a memorial and a mirror. I'll keep the light on, she said. Outside, the rain eased, thin sun slicing clouds like mercy. Emma gathered her folio, lifted the archival box, and stepped into the corridor where Lily waited. Sisterhood felt porous, uncertain, but alive. They walked to the elevator in silence, two silhouettes reflected in gold doors. When the lift dinged open, they entered side by side. As the door slid shut, Lily whispered, "No cameras." Emma met her gaze. "No cameras," she echoed, voice firm, and with surprise a note of peace. The elevator descended, numbers blinking downward toward ground, toward aftermath, toward beginnings. In the mirrored wall, Emma saw her face, tired, scarred, resolute, and behind it the faint reflection of her father's camcorder, cradled like a compass pointing true. The cables hummed, floors slipped by, and somewhere between 24 and lobby, Emma allowed a quiet smile, one not meant for any lens to unfurl. The contract documents pressed against her ribs. They were no longer weight, they were wings. Thanksgiving at True Light wasn't advertised. There were no flyers, no hashtags, no RSVP links. The only sign was a chalkboard leaning against the gallery's front door, the same one Zuri had once used to scrawl, "Truth lives here." This time the message was simpler. Warm light, no cameras, come in. Inside the gallery glowed golden under rows of borrowed string lights and mismatched standing lamps. The white pegboard wall shimmered with over 800 keys, now each a quiet testimony. Folding tables had been pushed into a long communal island, layered in thrifted fabric and surrounded by metal stools, yoga balls, even a deflated air mattress folded into seating. Every chair was taken. Steam curled from mugs of ginger tea, chai, and lemon balm. There was no turkey, no carving station, just a medley of homemade plates, tamales wrapped in banana leaves, vegan faux sweet potato pies, a tray of Ethiopian lentils, and someone's grandmother's rice pudding that had already been scraped clean. The room smelled like cloves, cinnamon, and burnt toast no one dared to admit was their fault. Emma stood at the far end of the table, one hand around her mug, the other resting gently on the chair back beside her. It was quiet, the kind of reverent silence that arrived not from absence but from fullness. She scanned the room, Hui dozing on a beanbag with his noise-canceling headphones lopsided, Gabe laughing with two high school filmmakers from Brooklyn, Zuri sketching a profile of a guest in her notebook. The projector screen behind them flickered with looping videos. No sound, just imagery, kids reading poems into iPhone cameras, an elderly woman dancing barefoot on a rooftop, a deaf father signing bedtime stories to his child. They played without commentary, just stories being witnessed. Emma slipped away briefly, stepping into her office to retrieve the box. It was wooden oak, roughly the size of a shoebox, and handmade, sanded unevenly but carefully. Inside were private pieces of her past notes from her father, early scripts the drive that once held truth cut. She reached beneath the top layer and pulled out the new envelope. Her name was handwritten on it in blue ink. The penmanship was unmistakable, elegant, but tentative. Lily's letter. No postage stamp, it had been delivered in person and left with a volunteer 3 days earlier. Emma opened the flap, unfolded the paper, and read silently. Emma, I know I owe you more than words, but I also know I'm still learning how to speak without rehearsing, how to feel without performing. I'm still shedding skin that wasn't mine to wear. I want to love you without needing to own you. I want to be your sister without asking for the center spotlight. I'm not asking you to trust me again, not yet. I just want to know if you'll still be there when I've learned how to show up honestly. Can you wait for me? Lily. Emma read the letter twice, then folded it along a new crease and placed it gently back in the wooden box nestled between her father's old storyboard sketches and the dried lavender she'd kept from the gallery's opening night. She didn't read the letter aloud. She didn't mention it to anyone. Some things she'd learned weren't meant for curation. They were meant for protection. She stepped out again. Guests were refilling mugs. Someone had started plucking chords on a travel guitar. The melody wasn't quite a song yet, but the shape of one lived in the room. At the back of the gallery, the original camcorder sat on its pedestal. Someone had placed a tea light beside it. Emma didn't know who. Maybe it didn't matter. She walked to the center of the room toward the gallery's old stage, the same spot where she'd once introduced a collage of strangers' truths to a room half full. Tonight, no one needed introduction, but they still watched her waiting as she climbed one step and turned to face them. No microphones, no background score, just Emma. Her voice was soft, but steady, the kind of tone you use not to demand attention, but to respect the ears receiving it. I used to think I had to ask for love, she began. I used to think if I worked hard enough, edited perfectly, stayed quiet, stayed useful, someone would eventually choose me. The room exhaled. Murmur of understanding passed through the air like breeze through wind chimes. I don't think that anymore, she continued. Now I choose. She paused, looked out over the room filled with firelight eyes and uncurated faces. I choose who gets my story. I choose who gets my silence. And I choose who I trust to sit with me even when the edits are messy. She looked up beyond the crowd straight into the lens of the gallery's archival camera, the only one allowed inside tonight. She had turned it on not to broadcast, but to preserve. For the future. For herself. And tonight, she said, I choose to keep the light on for those still looking for their way out of shadow. A beat. Then she added, quiet for the camera alone. I once begged to be loved. Now I learn to choose who is worthy. No applause. Not because they didn't feel it, but because no one wanted to fracture the moment with sound. Emma nodded once, then stepped down. She walked to the back wall, found an empty hook just above eye level, and hung a small brass key of her own, the last one in the tray. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to belong to something that didn't demand she disappear to do so. Outside, the city glimmered in frost. The first snow hadn't fallen yet, but the air smelled of it crisp, clean, promising. Back inside, someone dimmed the lights. And on the wall behind the table, the gallery projector faded to black. Then slowly it lit up once more, a white title card glowing in the dark, no music, no voiceover. Just 4 words hand-drawn in Emma's own cursive. True light. The frame we choose. Fade out.